Hi, this is Patricia Stepler with your Inside Power, and welcome to the show. At your Inside Power, we are giving you the opportunity to understand what you have inside of you that can help you to create the life of your dreams. I want to start today with a quote. Never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that's by Buckminster Fuller. We have to change something we're doing, some action we're taking, some behavior we have in order to change our results. If we don't, we've got that definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting something different to happen. So let me just share with you a story. I heard this years ago, but there was a lady and she was making a ham and she cut off the end of the ham and put the ham in a pan. Well, her daughter was watching her and she said, Mom, she said, why do you cut off the end of the ham? And she said, well, because my mom did that. And so the little girl went to her grandmother and said, Grandma, why do you cut off the end of the ham when you put it in the oven? And she said, well, because my pan is only so big. So she cut it off because there was a reason. Her pan wasn't big enough to have a large ham into it, so she cut part of it off. But her daughter was doing it because she'd seen her mom do it. She didn't know why she was doing it. She was just doing it. So what we have to realize is that, here's another quote, and this one's by Joe Barker. He says, to be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm. You see, that was a paradigm to her. She cut the ham off because that was habit. It wasn't that she did anything different or created something new. It was just a habit. She'd seen her mom do it, so she thought that's what you did. We have habits that we do all the time. We don't know why we do them. Some experts say that 95% of our day is habitual. Well, if we're living a day that's just based on habits and we're doing things out of habits, we're just allowing ourselves to go through the motions without really thinking. And that's the whole topic of today. People need to stop and think. When you start to think, then you start planning and you can see where things are not making sense. So we have to get to the point where instead of reacting to situations, we are responding to situations and we think and we plan. So everything that's happened, keep this in mind, everything that's happened in your life up to this point, it's had to happen that way. And there's a reason it's happened that way. And what we have to realize is that it's the way it was supposed to be. I relate back to my son, and if you've listened to other broadcasts that I've had, you'll know that he won a full scholarship to college. And he won that not in the way that he expected to. You see, he was wanting to play baseball in college. And the team that he thought he needed to play on in the summers when he was in high school didn't select him the second year. They selected him as junior year, but didn't select him as senior year, well, in between his junior and senior year. And he was devastated. What he didn't realize is that his goal was that full scholarship, and the team that he thought he needed to be on was not the team that would get him the full scholarship. Nobody on that team got a full scholarship to college. Nobody. The team he needed to be on was another one that wasn't too far from where we lived, but they had a connection with another school and in which he could get a full scholarship to college. So he was devastated at the time because he did not realize it, but it had to happen that way. It had to be the cause to get to the effect that he really wanted. So sometimes when things are going wrong, instead of looking at it as discouragement or that you failed in some way or that it's this huge obstacle, remember that story, because maybe it has to happen and you may not see it right away. He certainly did not. He didn't see it right away at all. And in fact, it took probably 8 months, maybe, until he realized that it had to happen that way. So just realize everything that's happened to your life, there's been a reason for it. I think of that with my own business. So I started my own business, but I didn't know what to do. And I felt like I went through a lot of obstacles, which most people would have quit. And a lot of people I know did quit because they did not realize that there were things they had to go through, and they weren't pleasant. There's nothing pleasant about wasting your time or your money going through something that did not work for you. But you have to realize, if the goal is there, and if we believe that whatever we see in our mind, we can eventually hold in our hand, or we can see in our reality, then you have to realize that that's something you had to go through in order to get to that goal. So even though it's not pleasant, sometimes we have to go through things because we need to learn. We need to learn something from those experiences. So everything happens by law. There are laws in this universe. You cannot change them. You can go against them, but you cannot change them. And when you go against them, you just don't get, the same results that if you work with the laws. And if you need to learn more about the laws, by all means, reach out to me and we can talk about those, and I can give you some examples, and I can help you to follow those laws so that you are getting the things that you really want in life, instead of allowing the things to happen in your life that perhaps you do not want. So change requires us to find new ways to go about things. We have to get out of that box thinking. And when you start to think differently, things will change. I remember a situation when my one daughter was in high school and she was working at one of her first jobs. And something didn't go right. I don't quite remember at the time, but, I asked them, I said, well, why do you do it this way? And the answer was, well, that's the way we've always done it. Now, see, there's nothing creative or no thoughts coming when you say, well, that's the way we've always done it. How does that make it the best way? If you never change anything, and this is the way you do it. See, this is what gets people in trouble, especially nowadays, because they say that 100 years of past history is like 1 year today, as far as change is going. Things are changing so rapidly. And when we stay stuck in our box and we say, what's the way we've always done it, therefore we continue to do it that way, we are just falling behind, and we are just causing our own problems. If you want to be successful in today's day and age, you have to be ready and willing to change and take the opportunities that come to you, because things are happening. If you can think of things happening in 1 year that used to take 100 years before that would happen, that's how quick things are changing. So we have to be ready and willing to step outside the box, step outside of our comfort zone, and do something different. So if we know that nearly everything we do is habitual and things are changing rapidly, then we also have to understand that there's no right or wrong way, but there's always a better way. We can look at something and say, well, it's not right or wrong, but maybe we can find a better way to do something. But we have to be creative. And the creative is at the opposite of routine. Now, if creative is at the opposite of routine, sometimes we need a good routine. I know for myself, I have to have a routine in the morning. If I don't get up and exercise first, and then eat breakfast and then get ready, that's my routine. If I don't do it in that order, I guarantee you the one thing that doesn't get done during the day is exercise. It has to be the first thing I do. And in business, I also have a routine, things I have to do first before I start my more creative things. So sometimes those routine things need to be done. And so you have to have a routine for some things, but then you have to also allow yourself to be creative and not be stuck in the idea that there's only one way to do it. Because remember, there's not a right way or a wrong way, but there's always a better way. So when you desire something, to get to that change, you must be able to change your paradigm. Your paradigm is those habitual thought processes, just like the lady with the ham. She cut her ham because that was a habit. Her pan was plenty big enough to put that ham in, but she did it out of habit. When the habit's in control, when that paradigm, those persistent habits are in control, nothing's going to change. It's not going to allow you to change, even though that's exactly what you want. You can desire something and that's what you want. But if that paradigm's in control and it's saying you don't deserve it, or you can't do it, or who do you think you are, or you're not good enough, whatever it is, then nothing's going to change. You must change the paradigm first. How do you change it? Same way it was put in there, spaced repetition. Eric Hoffer said this: to learn, we need to have a certain degree of confidence, not too much and not too little. If we have too little, we think we can't learn. If we have too much, we think we don't need to learn. So we need to learn something new. We need a little confidence, but not too much. Because if you have too much, you think you don't need it. And if you have too little, you think you can't do it, that you're not capable. And he also said this about learning. He said, in times of rapid change, and that's where we're at. We are in times of rapid change. All you have to do is look at everything that happens in a week. Now think about it. If 100 years can fit into 1 year, that means 1 week is like, what, 2 years going on? So you have a lot happening in a week. 2 years have passed. So he says to learn, in times of rapid change, learners will inherit the earth. Learners, are you a learner? And he says, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. So if you're willing to learn, you'll inherit the earth because you're willing to change. But if you think you know it all, and you're what do they call learned, you're going to find yourself in a world that no longer exists. How often have we seen that happen? So we are either learning or we're not. If we're learning, we're moving forward. If we're not, we're going backwards. So we can do that all by developing ourselves from within, by being willing to step out and learn things that are new. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, is to invest in yourself, to learn new things, to always be on that cutting edge, and to be willing to listen to others. That's what being coachable. When I have a client, I know they're coachable if they're willing to listen. And sometimes I get on calls where my coach is, and I listen to people that try to interrupt the coach. The coach is trying to help them to move forward, to help them to learn. And sometimes people are resistant to that, maybe think they know more than the coach does, and they question. And it's good to question, don't get me wrong, but it's good to question when you want to find out more information. It's not good to question in the way of, are you sure about this type attitude? Hopefully you understand the difference there. So learning is needed to improve our lives. We have to keep learning new things and improve the quality of our life. And when we do that, we invent the person we want to be, because we've decided, we have this picture perhaps of who we need to be or what we want to do with our lives. And we invent ourselves to be that person because that's why we're here. Otherwise, this is what happens. You allow the world to mold you into the person that the world thinks you should be. Now, as world, I'm saying, other people in that you're in contact with. You allow them to mold you into the person that they think you should be, instead of allowing yourself to be the person that you want to be. And we have to make sure that when we do that, that we are investing in ourselves, and we have to make sure we make the right investments for us. Sometimes you'll see people, and maybe they go into the same career as their parents or their grandparents, and they maybe don't want to do that, but they've been molded into that. And maybe they get into that position, and 5 or 10 years, they hate what they're doing. And when they want, they invent themselves and they become the person they want to be. When they feel molded, they tend to be very stuck. And that's why sometimes people are stuck. I mean, there's lots of reasons for people being stuck, but that can be one of the reasons, because they've allowed others to mold them into the person that they are, instead of thinking about who they are. And that comes from the inside, hence your inside power. So just because we know something doesn't mean we do it. And there's the next thing. And that all goes back to the paradigm. We can know exactly what to do to change or to get out of our comfort zone. We may know exactly what we need to do. That doesn't mean we're going to do it. Why is it? Because that paradigm is controlling us. It controls everything we do. It controls how we use our time. Paradigms control how we utilize money, controls our perception of what's going on is controlled by a paradigm. I think about this in today's world. We are being completely controlled by our paradigms when we look at a situation and we only see it one way. There's always two sides to every story, always two sides to every story. But when we're only willing to look at one, we're allowing that paradigm to control us and to not look at all the sides of the story and how everybody's thinking. Training companies or companies spend billions of dollars training people to do things, and yet they don't do them. Because their paradigm, if they understood how the mind worked, they would understand that you can give people training. It doesn't mean they're going to do it. Because as long as the paradigm's in control, the first thing you need to do is to allow the mind to change so that people will accept that they can do something different. You will see this with two salespeople. They can have the exact same training. They can be selling the exact same item. They could be selling in a very comparable area. And one can be very successful and the other one can be an utter failure. Why does that happen? Because the paradigm's in control. It's not that they couldn't do better. It's that their mind, their habitual thinking is controlling them. I was reading a story the other day, and it was talking about this salesman who would get in his car, and if he got to the spot where he was supposed to sell, I believe it was insurance, that he would hope the person wasn't there. Or sometimes he would just drive around and not bother to stop. His paradigm was in control. He knew exactly what to do. He knew exactly what to say. He knew exactly what he was selling. Other people could sell it, so there was no reason why he could not, except that his mind was in control. And it wasn't until he made a decision, very important, made a decision and decided to change, that anything happened. Because remember, what did Buckminster Fuller say? You never change things by fighting the existing reality. That's what he was doing. He was trying to fight the existing reality. He wanted to be successful, but his paradigm wouldn't allow him. To change something, you have to build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. He had to build a new model of who he wanted to be. And our self-image, our self-confidence is one of the first paradigms. Is a very large paradigm, and it's very strong inside of us. And we have to change who we think we are or who we think we're not, and change that so that we can become the person that we need to be. So if we don't understand how the mind works, how are we going to shift and change to become that person? We have to be organized, and we have to learn to be efficient in order to shift our thinking. And the shifts have to be attached to an emotional reason. You have to be emotionally involved with why you want to do something different. Otherwise, you're not going to move off the mark. It has to be uncomfortable. Like, the dog sitting on a nail is not going to move until it becomes really uncomfortable. So we have to get emotionally involved in what it is that we want to do. There's a story, even knowing this, Napoleon Hill, I have a recording of him telling about the title for his book, Think and Grow Rich, that he could not come up with the title of it. And he knew all this information. He knew how the mind worked. And he never got emotionally involved with finding that title until his publisher called and told him that if he did not get a title, he was going to name it Use Your Noodle and Get the Boodle. And he said, my gosh, you'll ruin me. And so that night he got very emotionally involved. I've got to have a title for my book. And he says he was yelling it so often and so much that the apartment above him thought he was probably yelling at his wife, and it was, tapping on his ceiling to be quiet. And he said in the middle of the night, about 2:00 in the morning, he woke up and came up with the title Think and Grow Rich. And he called his publisher and told him, and his publisher was like, you've got it. And he said, why did it take him so long to get that title when he knew exactly what he needed to do? He needed to get emotionally involved in that decision, plant that in his mind, and it would come to him. He knew that, but it didn't mean he did it. And that's the way we are. We can know something and yet not do it. So we have to step out of our comfort zone in order to cause change and to change our results. And results always have a cause and effect, always. The key to it is to be aware. Awareness is everything. If we are unaware, we are ignorant of some information. The results are always an expression of how aware we are. So awareness is often blocked by layers of virus code. Just like a computer can get a virus, you're thinking the awareness isn't there because there's virus code operating there, and it's stopping you from being aware. You have to get rid of the virus that's causing that and go to the power that you have inside of you to make the changes you need. Once you become aware, your life just completely expands. And you can deal with other people and other situations. It all comes down to the awareness that you have. A person doesn't earn $100,000 a year because they want to earn $100,000 a year. They earn $100,000 a year because they're not aware of how to earn $100,000 a month. It's all about awareness. Once you become aware of how to do that, then you can do it. And just need to learn and expand. We need to be constant learners. Everything, as I said, goes by law. You image it in your mind, you get emotionally involved, and you change your paradigms and change your actions to get a different result. That's how it works. Don't allow the outside world to get into your way and knock you off your track. Don't allow the world to do that. You have got to be your own person. You've got to go to the inside of you and not allow the outside distraction. You see, we live by our senses. We see, hear, feel, taste, touch the world. It's around us. It comes into us through our senses, but we cannot allow that to control our thinking. We have to think. That's one of the greatest gifts we have, is our ability to think. We are the only animal in the animal kingdom that has the ability to think and reason, and yet so many people don't even use it. So we have to make sure that we don't allow the outside world to get in our way. There's this wonderful quote by Bob Proctor. It says, "It's all about awareness. There is a marvelous inner world that exists within man. And the revelation of such a world enables man to do, to attain, to achieve anything he desires within the bounds of nature." That's the gift you've been given, awareness. If you need more information about this, please reach out, and you can connect with me on social media. I'm either at Patricia Stepler or Patty Stepler. You can reach out to the Win-Win Women Network. You can come to the show and we can have an interactive conversation about this. And I'd love to know what you're thinking about it, or be able to coach you on how to develop more awareness and become the person that you truly want to be. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you next week.